Hi everyone and welcome to Priority Holder. And today we'll be playing Mono Red Dragon's Feet in Explorer. Yes, you heard that right, Dragon's Feet. You may be asking yourself, why would we want to play Dragon's Feet? That's a good question, I'll tell you why. I originally set out trying to play like a red-black Dragon's deck. Sort of mid-rangey, and it was horrible. I was really wanting to leverage Crux of Fate and it being a one-sided Wrath. Had Orb of Dragonkind. Anyway, Terror of the Peaks, stuff like that. It just wasn't working for me. And then somehow, something clicked, and I'm like, wait a second. A lot of these cool dragons are about 7 mana, and Irencrag Feet adds 7 mana. So that's how this deck was born, is that realization. So this is the card everything's centered on, is Irencrag Feet. 4 mana, it boosts this up to 7 red mana, but we can only cast one more spell this turn. And conveniently, Drakuseth Maw of Flame costs 7 mana, so it's a lot more powerful when it comes down on turn 4. And whenever it attacks, it deals 4 damage to one target and 3 damage to each of 2 other targets. So it gets to spread out 10 damage when it attacks, and that's even before it deals combat damage. So it's quite the powerful creature. The other sort of big whammy we have on the top end is Inferno of the Star Mounts. 6 mana, 6/6 flying haste, can't be countered with fire breathing, and it has this special ability if it ever gets to 20 power. So this is just another huge creature. If we Irencrag feed it out, it's 7 power hasty flyer that can get them. So those are the biggest payoffs we have for using Irencrag feet. We also have some intermediate sized dragons, 2 Glorybringers that can exert to deal 4 damage to non-dragons, and 2 Goldspan Dragons, which can create treasures. And so you see we have a lot of haste in this deck. The other little nifty thing we have going on, because this notably makes 7 mana, we have 2 copies of Varric's Bladewing. This one can be cast as just a 4 mana 4/4 flying, which isn't horrible, but you can also pay the kicker and get an additional 4/4 flying dragon. So this is a useful play for us at 4 mana or 7 mana. So it allows us to, if we don't have an Irencrag feat, run it out. But if we do have one, get some value out of it. Now, unfortunately, both Varric's and the token it makes are legendary, so I didn't go too crazy. I still just have 2 copies because of that fact. Now, the other nifty thing we have going on in this deck is a card I see no one use called Draconic Intervention. It's essentially a sort of like Crux of Fate, it works on non-dragons, but this one requires you to exile an instant or sorcery from your graveyard and deals X damage to each non-dragon, where X is the exiled card's mana value. And it also exiles the creatures that die this way. So I figured, since we're already packing some number of sorceries with Irencrag feet, we'll have some natural fuel for Draconic Intervention. And so to further accommodate that, I made sure I added some MDFC lands, so a couple Shatterskull Smashing, which is independently good, but now can end up in the graveyard for Draconic Intervention, as well as 2 Valakut Awakening, because you could see with how clunky our top end is, this is also useful in just getting rid of cards that are just completely uncastable at that moment. So, and then we also have a little removal suite, 4 Strangles, 4 Dragon's Fires as early interaction. Dragon Fire deals 3, but we can reveal a dragon to instead deal damage equal to its power. So we could deal 6 or 7 damage with it, potentially. And so it's a little bit light in instant sorceries, but I find with the package we have and just firing off removal, and then the help of things like Fable of the Mirror-Breaker with its second chapter rummage ability, and Sarkhan Fireblood, another special one. It taps, +1, it can rummage once, or it can +1 to add 2 mana for dragon spells. So it's essentially Irencrag Feet Jr. right here that can help us ritual out our dragons. So that's the idea. It has some utility built in the mana base, but that's what we're trying to do is use the ritual to get extremely powered dragons out early, and then use the various rummaging and control elements we have to put ourselves in a good position. Anyway, so that's Dragon's Feet, and let's quit dragging our feet and get into the games. So this is a good hand. Doesn't look it at first, but two of the cards we have are MDFCs, so we do have some lands. Okay, that is a little worrisome. The fact that we have an extremely slow hand versus an aggressive deck. Okay, so they just hammer us, play with fire, hit us with the goblin again. So that is not the most common choice of one dropped in mono red, so I'm wondering if we're facing goblins. It could be mono red. Second play with fire hits us, so already we haven't even hit turn 3 and we are down to 13 life. Light up the stage, produces some 1/1s, so this appears to be like a low to the ground mono red. Okay, so we desperately needed that third land, but that fortune lets us play Fable the Mirror-Breaker, which, the goblin token's larger than any of their creatures, so it's at least something as we're hanging on for dear life already on turn 3. So they play another goblin, and they have a third play with fire, which takes care of our token, so they attack for 4, and we are already down to 9 life. Okay, so interesting decision here. So we drew the untapped land, though it will have to bolt us down to 6 to do so. We also have Draconic Intervention, which is going to clean things up nicely. So opt to discard those and fortunately draw an untapped source that doesn't bolt us. And purposely discarded an instant or sorcery with Fable the Mirror-Breaker to set up Draconic Intervention. However, before that, I decided to just Irencrag feet out a Drakuseth. I know we are in danger of dying, but this helps us get closer to actually winning the game. So it looks like the opponent's going all out at us. They hesitate for a moment, though. Okay, so think about it, and we decide to block the one that when it dies, eternalizes, creates a zombie token. That way, if we fire off Draconic Intervention, they have 0 creatures left over. Okay, so they keep the Firebrands back. We get Fable of the Mirror-Breaker. And there are some options, like, do we fire off another Irencrag feat into a Glorybringer, or do we fire off the Draconic Intervention? I did not want to kill our Reflections of Kiki-Jiki if we didn't have to. So I decided to turbo out Glorybringer and exert it, and then also attack with Drakuseth. So between Glorybringer's trigger and Drakuseth, we get to kill 4 of their creatures. So I make sure to prioritize the ones that tap for damage and the ones at the most upside. So leave them just with the zombie token remaining. So I don't think I'd fault anyone for firing off Draconic Intervention to kill the creatures, but I went for maybe a little riskier play, but one that leads to us winning more quickly. Okay, so the opponent just empties out their hand, brings us all the way to 2 life. They have 1 creature left. And they certainly have, we've seen already, they're packed full of burn spells. So many cards could take us down right here. However, they don't draw it. And they're done. Okay. Not the best hand. Okay, it looks like we're against blue-white control. Or at least, yeah, with the foretell right there, it's probably blue-eye control. It could be like Esper Greasefang, technically. But yeah, the more lands you see them play, like definitely with Castle Ardenvale, it's definitely blue-eye control. So we have an incredibly slow hand, and it's a very poor hand with 2 Draconic Interventions, and those are just not going to do anything against this opponent. So we're hoping for some way to discard those into something better, like Fable the Mirror-Breaker, letting us pitch those. All right, so they've already got to fire off Behold the Multiverse. There's playing lands. The game's going fairly well for them at this point, and pretty bad for us. Happy to see Valakut Awakening. That will be useful to try and get rid of some cards that are just horrible for the matchup. So I go ahead and decide to fire off Irencrag Feet. I'm honestly sort of hoping they counter it, like in fear of what comes next, but they wisely just let it go, and we fire off a kicked Varric's Bladewing. I'm fully expecting this to be countered, but I'm very surprised that it resolves, and you get to see what I consider one of the best animations in Arena. I mean, look at that, those 2 dragons with 4 wings. It's just so awesome. Always very happy when I get to kick Varric's Bladewing. So opponent on our end step fires off Memory Deluge. They are not concerned at all. So I'm worried about like them just wrathing right now. They just run out Teferi and uptick to draw a card. And they untap their 2 lands. And they hesitate on their end step. Okay, that's because they're having to discard. Alright, so we draw a second copy of Strangle. I decide to fire up Den of the Bugbear. Just not try and run into any counter spells, especially because they most likely have non-creature counter spells. And before we even attack, they fire off Fateful Absence on our Den of the Bugbear. Okay, so that allows us to at least 100% kill Teferi by attacking both dragons into him. But that was tough because that was a land destruction spell for them, and we're down Den of the Bugbear. They followed up with the second copy of Teferi, and when they can untap and have 3 mana open, that's when they have all their unconditional counters. So that is a little concerning. Still have 2 copies of Strangle, and decide to attempt to take down Teferi and send both dragons at him. Okay, actually, no, did something a little different. Sent 1 dragon at Teferi, 1 at them, trying to actually work on their life total a little bit. Okay, so opponent cycles a Shark Typhoon, creating a 1/1 shark. And they use that to chump block our dragon heading towards Teferi. So Teferi doesn't take any damage in that combat. And aside, there's not going to be that many great targets for Strangle, and so I go ahead and fire off both Strangles to take down Teferi number 2. Now, there's a tough decision here. I ultimately just decide to crack the clue and draw a card to see if I can get another land. We can play Valakut Awakening as a tap land to get us closer to Inferno of the Star Mounts. I am just so concerned about getting, basically turning those Draconic Interventions into something useful that I end up not playing Valakut Awakening. Not sure what was the correct move there, especially when we draw Glorybringer. So this time I fire off Irencrag Feet, and surprisingly they counter it this time. They use Absorb on it, which was wise for them because they would not have been able to encounter our Inferno of the Star Mounts once Irencrag Feet resolved. So we get in a little more chip damage with Varric's Bladewing. But the game's going very well for our opponent. and poorly for us. So opponent still has, they have 7 mana untapped, 4 cards in hand, and Memory Deluge in the graveyard. So they're doing fine. So we get them to 11 and decide this is a pretty good turn to fire off Valakut Awakening. So attempting to turn those Draconic Interventions into something useful. And I'm basically at the point now where I'm just trying to make them keep answering things. And so they do counter it, and we play a tap Den, which will allow us to cast Glorybringer next turn. So they cycle land on end step. The goal here is just to run them out of answers. But if we've been able to accelerate a little bit more, we might have been able to be in a better position. But we've allowed them to sort of take their time, spend their mana, filter their cards. And so they have tons of mana, and now they have both Castle Ardenvale and Castle Vantris and hidden in their Hall of the Storm Giants. So that makes it so our Den of the Bugbears are not effective anymore. So we just got a little choked on mana, had some dead cards, and just couldn't really deploy our game plan fast enough. And so I'm able to cast Inferno of the Star Mounts, which notably cannot be countered. Okay, so Varric's Bladewing and Inferno of the Star Mounts are out. An opponent decides to just fire off Memory Deluge from their graveyard. And that's pretty bad news because they just got to grab the best 2 cards out of 7. So we get them all the way down to 1 life. And then they depopulate. So that takes out our dragons. And so right when our hopes are getting up, they're at 1 life. They depopulate and then follow up with Dream Trawler. And so I skipped past. You could see my timer ran down. I was really trying to figure out what to do. We could have sent Glorybringer in there. Actually, now I think about it, maybe Glorybringer would have been better to force the Dream Trawler block. Anyway, I end up going with the Den of the Bugbear. So fire off Irencrag feet. And use Den of the Bugbear. Actually, sorry, not Irencrag feet. I'm confusing myself. But anyway, in retrospect, I'm wondering if I should have Glorybringer there. Because, they could have hexproofed the Dream Trawler, but then they would have died from the damage. So it would have forced the chump block, essentially, and would have left us with the Glorybringer in play. So now we attempt to cast Glorybringer, and they have the Essence Scatter for it. And we can't attack with our ground forces because they have Hall of the Storm Giants. So at this point, I go ahead and move to triple speed. The game lasts a little bit longer, but once our Glorybringer got countered, that was effectively game over. They are able to alternate between Castle Vantris and Castle Ardenvale to create endless blockers and set up their draws. And we just have a stranded Inferno of the Star Mounts. And so, we have 5 mana since our other den died. And they find Wandering Emperor with Narset. So that's really bad news for our Inferno of the Star Mounts. So you could see we fight the good fight for a while, but things just do not go well. We do get to see the Varric's Bladewing animation again, though. That's something. But yeah, we managed to take down Wandering Emperor only for Narset to minus again and find another Wandering Emperor. And so March of Otherworldly Light takes down Varric's Bladewing. And so now, even if we did draw the land for Inferno of the Star Mounts, they have the Wandering Emperor waiting in the wings to take it down very cleanly. And so we finally draw our 6th land. It's just too late at this point, though. They have so many ways to respond to what we're trying to do. So yeah, I think it really did come down to that turn where I used Den of the Bugbear to take down Dream Trawler. I think in my mind I was thinking that it would trade with Dream Trawler when they... anyway, that was a pretty big mistake. And doing it the other way around, getting the Glorybringer in play, and having Den of the Bugbear as backup, I think that might have been a possible path to victory in this game. Despite it going horrible the whole time. And you could see you get whammied by Narset with my Sarkhan activation. And so we hung in there for a while, and like you said, it was a long, agonizing loss, but we stuck it out to the bitter end. So this is a hand of potential. We have one piece of early interaction with Strangle, 2 Draconic Interventions, but we just will not be doing a whole lot early on. We see the dreaded plain Speaker of the Heavens opening, so already we know we're fighting against angels. So Strangle doesn't kill that many of their creatures. So many of them have 4 toughness, so just go ahead and fire it off right away on the Speaker of the Heavens. And then right away Bishop of Wings comes out. So alright, so fortunately draw land number 3, and we're able to play Sarkhan Fireblood and discard one of our 3 copies of Draconic Intervention. Now that's nice because Draconic Intervention, in order to work, needs an instant or sorcery in the graveyard. And so with the opponent playing Righteous Valkyrie and us drawing a land, this is just a perfect opportunity to slam Draconic Intervention, exiling Draconic Intervention from our graveyard to deal 4 to each non-dragon. So we take down Bishop of Wings and Righteous Valkyrie and feel absolutely amazing about that. So go ahead and decide to rummage again with Sarkhan. Oh, sorry, no. Go ahead and use the mana production and just pass the turn. Okay, so opponent plays their Splendid Angel and Speaker of the Heavens. So trying to calculate how to deal with them. Resplendent Angel is a big problem, especially with them being not too far from its activated ability to give it +2/+2 in lifelink. And that's just too dangerous to let them keep around. So decide to just fire off Dragon's Fire, take down Resplendent Angel, and deal with the Speaker of the Heavens later. Now I know I could have played Inferno of the Star Mounts here. I'm just trying to be really patient and just disrupt everything that they're doing since we're able to, and we just trust that the dragons will take them down quickly when the time comes. So they attack Sarkhan Fireblood with their little creature. They play Giada, and I almost almost used Dragonfire here, but then I realized, well, we have a clean answer in Draconic Intervention, so thankfully did not pull the trigger on Dragon's Fire, because Draconic Intervention is just a clean 2-for-1, and we had to just exile a Dragon's Fire in our graveyard to deal 2 to each non-dragon, and that keeps a piece of removal on our hand anyway. So alright, so go ahead and just keep plussing Sarkhan. So opponent plays another Resplendent Angel and another Speaker of the Heavens, which is essentially perfect for us because we have that dragon's fire in hand. So they're empty-handed, they're tapped out, so it could take down Resplendent Angel. And this might be a little greedy. I just go ahead and pitch a land here, but I figure even if they like Skyclave Sarkhan, we could still Irencrag feet out Inferno of the Star Mount. Okay, so opponent plays Bishop of Wings, but they're just top deck at this point. Hope the best draw for them would be like a Collected Company. Okay, so now with all their major angel threats taken care of, go ahead and actually use Sarkhan's mana to send out Inferno of the Star Mounts. And the nice thing about it is that with its fire breathing and its haste, it just ends the game very abruptly. So one attack, it puts them to 19, and opponent's seen enough. All right, so on to the next game. It always feels good to beat angels. But anyway, now we're on to the next one. So we have a very high converted mana cost hand that's a little worrisome. We do have some good plays coming up, but it will be slow. Okay, so opponent plays 10th District Legionnaire on turn 3. It's a little bit of an unorthodox build, at least from my experience, but I can see the value of Paradise Druid as like a hex-proof creature to possibly use all the many combat tricks on, but this appears to be like a Naya Feather deck. So a slow start is just not very great right there. So they send in with 10th District Legionnaire, and now they have Feather in play to rebuy all their targeted spells. So I had a hard decision whether to block or not here. I know they have like a spell to pump it up, but I'm really wanting the mana production from our Goblin token. Okay, and so they of course do have the targeted spell, and we get smacked for a lot of damage, and they get their targeted spell back. Now these kind of decks play like God's Willing and stuff like that, so I'm cautious of using removal on any of their creatures. Now, Glorybringer would be really nice. The problem is we'd have to do like a post-combat Glorybringer and jump attack with our Goblin, so they opt not to block the Goblin. And basically this whole game is going to come down to this moment right here. So thanks to the treasure token, I now have Dragon's Fire and plenty of high-power dragons to try and take down something. And so I'm trying to decide. So I end up setting an upkeep stop on their turn to try and at least force them to waste mana on their turn. And so they fire off Defiant Strike. So they're officially tapped out. And the option of using my removal spell, Revealing Drakuseth, to kill either 10th District Legionnaire or Feather. And so I opt to kill Feather, but I wonder if that was the wrong choice, because Feather buys the spells back, but 10th District Legionnaire is the one that grows really, really fast. So it was a tough situation either way. And not only that, but I could have fizzled the card draw by hitting 10th District Legionnaire. So, and we'll see that decision comes back to bite us. Go ahead and opt for no blocks. Opponent hits us with a good game, and I knew we were in big trouble. And you could see here, might have been better to keep the feather alive. You don't like seeing either of them, but they just get extra value on 10th District Legionnaire with those +1/+1 counters. And so, especially with how much mana they have and like the card draw, they just at this point are able to chain targeted spells on their 10th District Legionnaire. So now they get up to 9 power with God's Willing. Still not enough to kill us. And then they cast Colossus, which definitely kills us. All right, next game. Okay, blue-black Shockland into Thoughtseize could be blue-black Control, could be Rogues, could be some sort of Greasefang. We go and play our Shatter Skull tapped, turn 1. And with Thoughtseize, they take our Irencrag feat. So White Source makes me think Greasefang, but they play a turn 2 Tenacious Underdog. And we haven't drawn any early plays, so we just play our second land and pass. Do a second copy of Fable the Mirror-Breaker, though, so feel pretty good about that. Okay, and so they follow up with the turn 3 Rafine, which allows them to connive and put that counter on Tenacious Underdog. So already in danger, Rafine is just super powerful. There's not much we can do besides play Fable the Mirror-Breaker and pass. So we are wanting a fourth land. Opponent has done some work for us by putting a 4 converted mana cost instant or sorcery into our graveyard for us to set up our Draconic Intervention. Now, they go ahead and Fatal Push our Goblin token, so now we don't have the option to chump attack to get that 4th mana to fire off Draconic Intervention. So it's going to have to be Fable the Mirror-Breaker and our draw step that gets us there. So we did not draw a land, so we're definitely discarding 2 cards to try and desperately find a land. We need one for sure. So definitely discarding Irencrag feat. I decided to also discard another Fable the Mirror-Breaker. They have so many large creatures and flyers, like it's just too slow for the assault we're already on. We're at 10 life right now. And fortunately, in our very last possible draw, we get an untapped red source. And I'm a little sad because Rafine has 5 toughness, and it will survive our little anti-dragon wrath. Now, fortunately, Draconic Intervention does have the rider that it exiles the creatures killed this way. And so, otherwise, Tenacious Underdog could probably just, together with Rafine, kill us next turn. Or close to it. So they're left just with Rafine, but the conniving amount goes down with so few attackers. So they attack with Rafine, pitch a land, and they chart a course, draw 2, and they cast Rafine's Informant. So Rafine remains a 2/5, and they pitch a land with Rafine's Informant, play a tap land. So we're feeling amazing after that sequence. So we get our Reflections of Kiki Jiki. Now, because Irencrag feat only lets us cast 1 spell afterward, we have to lead with Strangle. And we maybe could have saved it, but I'm just trying to decrease the amount of damage we're taking. So, especially because Rafine benefits from multiple attackers, denying them attackers is really nice. So we're able to fire off Irencrag feat into Inferno of the Star Mounts. I make a small mistake there by not using the extra ritual mana to activate the Fire Breath of Inferno. So Ultimately not the biggest deal, but that is a mistake. And so right away Inferno puts them down to 8 life. An opponent's hesitating. So they attack with their Fiend, digging for something. And then we see Parhelion hit the graveyard. So it is a Greasefang deck that we're facing. And we get there. Next game, snap off a keep. This deck is a little bit clunky and slow. So keeping a slow hand and then seeing a gold hound on the other side is a little worrying that we're going to be just aggro to death. It's also concerning that we didn't have a third land, but we managed to get there, and it might have been game over right there if we didn't draw a third land. But Fable the Mirror-Breaker is going to make everything right. That's why it's such a good card. So either the Goblin token will help us make a treasure, or the discarding will find us a land. So they go ahead and just take out our Goblin token right away with the burn spell. And then they follow up with Chandra Dressed to Kill. It's an amazingly good draw for them right there, or a good play. It's bad for us. It provides pressure, provides mana, it provides cards. So it allows them to uptick and then play the Kumano Saga. Okay, so we did not draw a land, so we're definitely going to discard 2 cards. So going to get rid of a Draconic Intervention. 1, 2, because we have a spare 1. 2, because the one we keep is going to need some instant or sorcery in the graveyard. And unfortunately, we end up drawing 2 more copies of Drakuseth and not a land. So missed the land drop there. However, fortunately have a second copy of Fable of the Mirror-Breaker. Here's where things get wild. So they play Goldspan Dragon, which becomes a 5/5 thanks to the Kumano Saga. And we're feeling pretty safe with the Draconic Intervention in hand. But that hits non-dragons, and we can't deal more than 5 damage with it. So feeling a little bit worried now, actually. Especially when we miss land on our draw step again. Still stuck on 3 mana. Trying to decide what to discard. Throwing away 1 Drakuseth. And just trying to think about what to do. And definitely throwing away 1. What do we select as the second card? Because we are desperate for lands at this point. And ultimately decide to discard both Drakuseths. We have an Inferno in hand. Okay, so we do find a land. Now, Glorybringer also only affects non-dragons, so that is a little unfortunate. But we have a pretty decent attack at their Chandra Dressed to Kill. They only have a gold hound on defense, so we could chip away at her loyalty a little bit, get a treasure token. Now, I was about to just run out an unkicked Varric's Bladewing to start setting up defense, but then I realized, wait, I can actually play Sarkhan and then use his plus ability to ritual out the Bladewing instead. So it takes me a second, but eventually realized that thanks to the treasure and to Sarkhan, that's a possible play. All right, so Sarkhan's uptick adds 2 dragon mana. And so this does, it gives us a little bit more defense, though it pales comparison to their 5/5 Goldspan. But it also allows us the option to chump block with Varric's Bladewing and then still ritual out Inferno of the Star Mounts, which will be larger than their boosted Goldspan Dragon. So their Kumano flips, and feeling better about the game, but still feeling pretty precarious at this point. Okay, so Chandra does the exiling for card draw mode. Okay, so Goldspan attacks. Snap off that chump block because Sarkhan is going to help us get our big dragons into play. And then something very unexpected happens. They fling their giant Goldspan to kill our Sarkhan. And anyway, I'm not sure what the opponent's motivation was for that, but that was about the best thing we could have hoped for. Because we would have just had a hard time dealing with that large Goldspan. So with Goldspan gone, we don't really care that Sarkhan's gone. And now we can play a Goldspan Dragon and exert it to take down one of their creatures and destroy Kumano. I did not attack with the Goblin token because they have two 1/1 first strikers, which they could have blocked and taken it down. So opponent's still at 20 life, so we take home the win. Okay, well, that's Mono Red Dragon's feat. And yeah, that was pretty fun. I think we went about like 3-3. That game against Control was pretty tough. We might have been able to navigate into a winning position. It's hard to say what they had in their hand, but maybe this deck is just so much fun. I mean, you saw that game one where we just got to just dump Drakuseth into Glorybringer against Mono Red and just raft their entire board just by attacking with dragons. So that you get some really glorious moments like that. You just get to sling multiple spells around, and then you saw us also tear apart angels by just hammering them with Dragon's Fires and Draconic Intervention. So this deck can do some cool things. As far as refinement, I think there could be a little bit more refinement. Possibly some more of the MDFC lands. Those just felt extremely strong. And maybe some earlier plays. Didn't really get to see Goldspan in action. Anyway, there's some choices you have for like which dragons to use and everything like that. But I don't know, everything felt pretty nice. We also have backup plans with like Fable the Mirror-Breaker, Den of the Bugbear if things go awry. So, but yeah, this was a really fun one, and I hope you enjoyed it. But yeah, let me know in the comments what would be your dragon of choice to cast with Irencrag feat. I appreciate you watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.